listening to the Bayview Podcast with hosts Andrew Clark and Chris Emery. This is designed to be a discussion on all things life and faith. We hope this serves as a weekly resource and encouragement to you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Bayview Podcast. My name is Andrew, one of your hosts, joined as always by Chris Emery. How are you?
I am doing super well. Good to be here. Always look forward to podcast day, right?
Yep.
So it's good.
No,
Although
it's good.
I will say, this past weekend here at Bayview Church, we had a huge thank you party for all of our volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
We call it Party on the Patio, and many of you were probably there. And so we bring in a big food truck, Steve's Smokin' Barbecue, which is
So
just
good.
the top of the line, right? And so they left a lot of leftovers. Have you been to the kitchen yet today?
Not yet.
Okay, I bet I ate like 1.5 pounds of pulled chicken and pulled pork about a half hour ago.
Yeah.
So I'm bored. I'm somewhere between bloated and sleepy.
A nap.
I've got that.
It's nap time.
That meat nap or something. I don't know, man. So
I get
no, it
that.
was super good. It was good times, good weekend. Just
Yeah.
it's just cool to see a couple hundred of our volunteers coming out and
Mm.
just thanking them, having that hangout time, good foods right
Yeah.
on the waterfront here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just so much that goes into Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or, anytime we do things as a church, like, it's really easy to think of those of us on stage as like the ones making it happen. It's just
Yeah.
like that's just not
Not
it's
even
not the
close.
case. And so there's a lot of people who help make what we do really good, really and really well done. And the majority are volunteers, people who are giving of their time to serve and be a part of something here. And so we probably should say thank you even more.
I
But it
agree.
is cool just to celebrate and see everyone come together and just spend a meal and some time. And yeah, it's just exciting to see people
Yeah.
want to be a part of what's happening.
Well, and it's cool because I believe the majority of them all understand the why behind it, and that it's much more than just maybe the specific area they're serving in. That every area of volunteering, and this applies to any of you, any listeners, that whatever church you go to, if you're not serving, find a way to serve because it's all part of the greater mission.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot here about the fact that it doesn't matter if you're greeting at the front doors, carrying an umbrella in the parking lot, serving coffee, kids, whatever level you're at, it's still a part of this mission of helping people find Jesus.
Yeah, it's good.
Because some of those points are so important for someone to come in and instantly feel at ease with a friendly face at the door, to have a little bit of that safety blanket of a hot cup of coffee.
Yep.
Like isn't that weird? Like holding a cup of coffee,
Yep.
you feel like you have some protection. Like I'm doing something with my hands, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but that's a big deal. And so we tell our coffee team all the time, you're not doing a beverage service. You're offering coffee as a means to make somebody feel welcome.
Yeah.
So that they have this opportunity to hear the gospel. So, that's a total sidebar, but I love our volunteers and I love our people that are part of our teams.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It is.
Such good people.
It's a huge blessing. And it's a reason to throw a really big party each year.
Yeah, it's a win.
Yeah, that's always a big win. So it's also, the thing for the sad side of it is that the party on the patio, our annual volunteer party, it always takes place towards the end of summer.
Yeah, it's true.
We're coming to the end.
It's coming. It's coming. Here
Yeah.
comes fall, and I talked to some people, like the bummer of fall is no more, right? Like beach weather, some of that kind of stuff. But I know I appreciate fall for the routine that kind of comes in and a little more schedule. And as an individual who runs warm, like I do, like the cooler weather. But yeah, it is that the kind of volunteer celebration is always like an indicator of like, okay, here we're just a couple weeks away from the chaos of school starting and just sports and everything kind of just getting up and running again. But it's a good transitional kind of moment.
Yep.
So
I agree. I actually enjoy fall. I enjoy, like you said, the routine. I enjoy the cooler weather without it getting cold.
Yep.
Like, to be able to get back outside, do some backyard fires.
Yeah.
Kind of just, it does. I love that. I try not to let the looming presence of the oncoming winter ruin my fall. Like
Sure.
that's sometimes my greatest challenge is that it's like I don't enjoy fall because I know what comes next.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that the leaves turning red and orange on the trees are not for our beauty, but it's the trees telling us to run.
Yeah, you better be ready.
Go south, run for cover. We're out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's all good, and just excited to see what God has for us. It also means we're towards the end of this teaching series we've been doing for the summer. Yeah. And that's what we've been using our podcast time for this last few months, is just kind of rehashing the topic from the previous week, and been through a lot of really, I feel like really not just intriguing, but important questions through the summer for all of us to be able to answer. This last week kind of was a little bit of a pre-wrap-up. Next week is the final portion of this teaching series. But this last week, we kind of went down the path of, okay, so we've got all these tools, all these things that we've learned, so to speak, some of the things to kind of build up our confidence to have these conversations with people who are far from God. But who are those people? Yeah. And we begin to go down that path of just kind of exploring, like, well, kind of as when you and I both played sports, high school, college sports, more in college and high school, but you get your scattering reports. You learn what you can about the team you're going up against so that you're the best prepared. Yeah. And we kind of begin to take that same approach this last week of like, hey, who are the people we're most likely to find ourselves in these conversations with apart from other religions, only because we didn't have the time. Yeah. We didn't have time in one Sunday to go down the path of let's explore every other religion that's out there, because there are a lot. Yeah. But we were focusing more on the people that we kind of put in that category. We say unbeliever, I think is probably the biggest broad stroke, but I think a lot of the new research firms use the term nones, N-O-N-E-S. Is that, you find that accurate?
Yeah, I've heard that term.
Is that a good broad stroke?
Yeah, and it is. It's, I think a lot of times when the question is brought up of like, what about those who've never heard the gospel? We do think of like those out on the remote island and some of that kind of stuff. And although we would hope and we desire that they would hear the gospel too, it sometimes gets lost on those of us when it's like, but I might never go to that island. So yeah, what about the person that I might run into at work though, that wants nothing to do with or has no gospel background, or has heard it and rejects it? Yeah. What about those people? Like, how do, it could very much have been, how do I share the gospel, but what does it look like to engage in conversation with those who want the none idea, like there's nothing there, and to understand maybe where they're coming from or what their baseline is, and not to oversimplify it, but again, for the sake of time, we kind of put it in some bigger categories. And I think these are some categories you and I both have some history in as far as engaging with people and having conversations. And so, but at the same time, some of these labels may be unfamiliar, or some of our listeners may have been like, wow, I didn't even know what that really meant. I've just heard the term. But the first one we talked about, that I'm sure everybody this is probably the one everybody's like, yeah, I get that, is talking with someone who would claim to be an atheist. Yep. Basic understanding, what's an atheist? Someone who kind of rejects the idea of like the one true God. Is kind of how I've always looked at it. Maybe there's really no belief there, or it's a belief that there is no God, basically. Yeah. Well, and I've always looked at it from the angle of they don't believe in my God. Yeah. But a true atheist believes in that there is no higher power at all. There's no God, that's probably a better no matter the name. Yeah. So they would come at it from the angle there's no supreme being out there. I would imagine most atheists are evolutionists. Sure. Believing that we resulted from the Big Bang, evolution, single cell into complex design, which is a whole other podcast of fun. But so it's not a personal attack on Christianity necessarily, although there would be some that maybe focused it there. They probably wouldn't truly be atheists. But yeah, there's just nothing. There's nothing out there.
And I was surprised to see that there's a very small percentage of people in the United States that claim this. Doesn't mean there's not more out there that live this way.
Sure.
But I think it was somewhere like around less than 4% of people in the United States would say, I am an atheist.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be higher.
Yeah, you would think it'd be higher. Okay, and I think that's where the confusion comes in too, is it's assumed that anyone who's not a Christian or, or fill in the other major categories, a Muslim or something like that, or Catholic, well, they must just be atheists then. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's where I think, we'll talk about this here coming up, but like I think you did a good job kind of breaking down the other categories per se that someone could be in. But yeah, I would think atheist being the one that's most talked about would have been a higher percentage.
What's been your experience in talking with people who are proclaimed atheists? How have you had a lot of that interaction?
The interactions I've had, a lot of it comes back down to the I don't want to use the word inability, but usually it's some sort of struggle with wrapping their mind around, like, why do people suffer? Why is there pain? Why would I believe in a God who created evil? Right? There tends to be some sort of like major question that results in them just being like, it's just easier to not believe in anything. And my mind can accept that, yep, I came and I'm going to become worm food. And that's just, life sucks. Here we go. Like, it's just kind of that, like.
So basically, because they can't come to grips with maybe some of the unanswerable questions. Yeah,
that, or just the idea of I can't see it, so why would I believe it?
Right.
Like, just some of that. But usually, I think come to grips with or wrap their mind around, usually atheists tend to be intelligent people. So, I think it's always more in those categories. There's usually some sort of catch.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's not so much, I don't believe in your God. It just really is like the idea of like a God, some kind of higher being. Yeah.
I'm not seeing it, so therefore it must not be. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. That's probably been a lot of my experience. And I've kind of found there's two broader groups within there. There is that group that is kind of what you're describing it, but I would call them the uneducated atheists. Not saying they're not educated in book knowledge, but they're uneducated in the ways of the Bible or religion, but they see enough evil, they see enough things that they kind of made a quick decision, like, listen, if all this is real, God can't be.
Yeah, that's good.
And so that's...
If there's war and there's pain, like what... When, wouldn't a bigger God care? Like that kind of stuff. Yep.
Exactly. Don't tell me there's a God that loves me and all this is happening. He can't exist. But there are the other side where I would call these more educated or studied atheists, where a lot of them, man, they know the Bible as well as we do, maybe better.
Sure.
And they've dug in, and now they come in, and we could do this with any topic. You can come in with the intent to punch holes in it. I could read anything and be like, all right, I'm going to read this from the angle of I'm going to tell you how all this is messed up and wrong. And, and so they do. They come with that heart and that vision. But they do know the Bible, and they know what we believe, and they've made an educated decision that, this can't be real.
Yeah.
And I think what I've found, and correct me if I'm wrong, in your experience, my feeling, my experience has been this: is that of the different groups of unbelievers that we're going to talk about, I find that the educated atheist is the most likely to try and suck me into a debate, and a go toe to toe, fact to fact kind of thing.
Yeah,
which my opinion is never leads to anything fruitful.
No, and that's we've joked before about the person on in the corner with the sign. Like, I feel like those are the people who are fighting. Yeah, it's the uneducated atheists and the person with the picket sign. Like, I feel like those two are the ones that are usually going at it. Just both desire some sort of debate to prove how smart they are. Or how much they know. Yeah.
And not a lot of listening going on, but a lot of opportunity to just present your side of the argument.
Yeah.
Probably a lot like a debate about anything that you try to have on Facebook or social media. Yeah. That's going to go nowhere. No one ever has been sucked into one of those. In my knowledge, it's sucked into a social media debate, and halfway through, be like, you know what? You've made some great arguments. I'm going to change my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, doesn't happen. But that's okay, because we've said from the beginning, the whole point behind this series of questions Christians should be ready to answer is not to prepare you for a debate or to go out there and arm you to persuade someone, because you can't persuade someone to Jesus.
Yep.
It was to give you confidence and just having good, healthy conversations.
Yeah, that's good.
And it is hard. I've had the conversations with both sides of the atheist group there, and I found that I think early on I kept thinking of like, all right, what's the magic answer? What's my trump card statement that's gonna be their aha moment?
Yeah.
And I'm not the aha moment source.
Yeah, that's good.
The Holy Spirit's got to be the aha moment source.
Yep.
And I think, years ago, we had a gentleman join a speaking team that I was on at the time, and he's with us just a real short stretch, but he's an apologetics expert out of the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, but he grew up as an educated atheist through his entire young adulthood. So he's an intellectual guy, deep reader, deep studier, brilliant mind, much smarter than I'll ever aspire to be. And through all of his intellect, he had chosen atheism as an educated choice. But he's a Christian now. And part of his testimony, part of his story that he'll tell is the transition came about not because of anything anybody said or any evidence presented to him. He actually tells the story. I'll probably mess this up, but I'll give you the short version. Basically, that he had a good friend who was a pastor, an evangelical pastor. And he said, he never engaged me in debate. He never tried to persuade me. He never threw facts and scriptures at me. He said all he ever did year after year was just love me. He kept treating me with love and showing me this love. And his words, if I remember correctly, were something along the lines of, at some point, I could no longer deny the presence of the love of Jesus.
Wow.
And that was it, which we shouldn't be surprised by that, to be like, oh, you mean Jesus saves? Jesus? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And all this guy, what a great pastor. Like what a great wise man to be like, listen, I'm just going to love the heck out of you. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm just going to love you where you are. And that was the turning point.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes get so defensive when someone attacks our faith, and we take it personally, and we get hurt, and then we get angry, and that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
They're looking for something that's real, and what is real is the love of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was good.
But as we said, the atheist, the true atheist, is probably a smaller slice of our exposure than what we realize with people we interact with. There's another group, and this is the one that kind of sent me down this path. Because when I was a young pastor, I was presented with a guy who claimed to be an agnostic, and I knew the term, and I'm sure it was somewhere in my education, but it was one of those facts that I must have learned and forgotten the moment the test was over, or just flat out got it wrong on the test. I don't know. Or if my roommates are listening, let's be honest, I probably skipped that class that day.
Sure.
But I didn't know what he's talking about. I'm trying to engage him in this conversation. I'm trying to listen, but everything he's saying, I'm like, okay, but I don't even know where you're coming from when you use that term. And so that was part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation. So an agnostic is a little different than an atheist, in that an agnostic is someone who will not take it aside. They haven't decided whether God is real or not. Yeah. They're kind of right there in that space, like, well, there could be a higher power out there. There could maybe not be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's usually some sort of thought of like you said, there could be a God. Yeah. I just don't know what God it is. I don't know who they are. Yeah. Yeah. It tends
or even if they are, maybe they're not.
Yeah, maybe they just really aren't there. Yeah.
I think the word, the origin of that word actually means without knowledge in its original form. And so, these are the people that I don't know. I haven't come across a lot of agnostics that are down looking for a debate, looking for an argument. Yeah. There seems to be this rather large, comfortable level of like, I'm kind of good on the fence.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I could see the safeness of that, of like, you can't be wrong, technically, if you've not made the choice in their mind. Yeah. because again, we've talked about miracles on this. We've talked about like there's a lot of things I think in this world that would point to there being something greater. But then I think you also have to balance it with all the evil in the world. And so it's like, okay, how like the idea of meshing those two together, I think that people have interacted with who would claim to be agnostic, that tends to be the struggle. It's like, yeah, I could tell there's something. I don't know what it is. But again, the world still is kind of like a not good place. So that's also hard to wrap my head around a higher power that's cool with that, right? So, I don't know.
And they don't at least my experience has been, they don't typically attack my beliefs because they're not disagreeing fully with me.
Yeah.
But it almost comes back to maybe that relative truth zone we were talking about a few weeks ago, where
that's true.
Hey, if that's good for you, rock on, man. That's your truth.
Yeah.
It might not be my truth. And so there still is, let's be clear, there still is a denying of God.
Yeah.
And so it's not like an agnostic is safe somehow because they might believe in God. That's not how faith works. That's not how commitment to our Heavenly Father works. But they're a lot less argumentative in my experience.
Yeah, and they tend to probably fall in the category of a seeker, like someone who actually like
could be
are probably the ones who are likely to come to the door of a church.
Yeah, possibly
because the what if, or I want to know more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've not had straight up a lot of conversations with people who just openly claim to be agnostic.
Yeah.
But like I said, the ones that I have, it tends to be that idea of like almost again back to the atheist side of I just can't wrap my head around it, and again I can't see it. So it's really this battle of faith, like the belief in things you can't see. It's like that part tends to be the hang up, right? I feel like for a lot of people before they come to faith.
Do you think there's more people that are agnostic than they realize that they just don't know the term?
Probably.
I think so.
I would think so. I would think so because, you even talked about the pastor and the atheist and that interaction of how he just loved. He just showed love. And I was at a wedding this weekend and the father got up and his word of advice was almost like a reminder to his son who just got married of like, show it, not just say it. And it's like that idea of like the ability to actually see and experience, I think makes the unseen more real, if we're honest. And that's even like what the base of that guy experienced was he just got to see and experience the love of someone. How could he deny that there was a God anymore? And I just think that tends to be the tension point, right? That's for those, and again, someone who's agnostic, and I think there's a lot of people that would fall in that category of like, I'm seeing it and I can accept it, but, and I think that's the doubts tend to maybe have some a little more area that to work with in their minds.
Yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree. So we talked about atheists, we talked about agnostics, then we talked about another group, and this group may be probably one of the more vocal groups out of this category of unbelievers, those who don't believe in God. It would be the skeptics, those who are outspoken maybe in their serious doubting of God's existence, or even sometimes God's sovereignty. I've heard both sides of that. I've heard skeptics who they're not denying God exists; they're just saying God doesn't care.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yep.
Or God is checked out, or we're just ants in his big experiment, and he's the guy with the magnifying glass burning us. So I've heard, skeptic is a huge broad stroke.
Yeah.
And a skeptic might say I'm an atheist, or a skeptic could say I'm an agnostic, but have you run into people, I don't know if I've run into people, maybe you have, that kind of openly wear that label?
I don't think I, off the top of my head, remember anyone who's just referred to themselves as skeptic.
Yeah.
I think you're right, where I do think the person who's a skeptic tends to be the person that thinks God doesn't care. He's up there lounging in his chair, and we picture Zeus or some sort of sort of like depiction of this great, amazing Greek god who's just kind of like, whatever, like. And again, I think the skeptic is that of, there probably are usually more educated, more intelligent, so there is the questions, and the doubts that tend to just take up more space. It's like, well, you can't prove this outright, so what do you want me to do?
Yeah. No, that's good. You're right. Like the standard they're setting for belief is that it can be proven outright.
Yeah.
Which is impossible to prove or unprove God. I've also found a lot of skeptics, if you listen to their story and they go far enough back, a lot of them carry some level of church hurt.
Yeah.
Or God disappointment.
Yep. Yeah, it's the person who prayed for the miracle, the heal my mom, that kind of stuff, and like it doesn't happen, and it's like, okay, there it is. God doesn't care. I thought you said He'd hear my words. I thought you said He, and it is. It's that sense of, I struggle to believe in something that, if it's supposed to be this all-knowing, all-loving God, then why is there evil? Why does this have to happen?
Yeah. Or they've at an earlier age or at some point in their past, they gave church a shot, and they were hurt or disillusioned by maybe the legalism of a church or the falseness of the teaching, or sadly, that one of the more common ones is they were let down by other people who call themselves Christians.
Yep.
And they were exposed to what they would label as hypocrisy, which may or may not be accurate, depending on the situation. Either way, they were exposed to the fact that people who are followers of Jesus, who are Christians, all of us, were still imperfect people. And so there's still mistakes that happen. There's still words that are spoken that shouldn't be, feelings, reactions, choices, whatever. But either way, it was a moment where like, aha.
Yeah.
See, that's not right. So now,
gotcha.
That's why God can't be real. Look at you. Which is, I kind of live on the fence here with this one a little bit of like, it could, someone's like, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's real. There are some people who call themselves Christians who should not, if we're honest.
Sure.
They should not use that label. That is not a banner you should be carrying.
Yeah.
But aside, those of us who are followers of Jesus, unfortunately, we're going to make some mistakes along the way. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask for forgiveness from time to time because I'm going to have a poor reaction, or I'm going to say something, or that's just the realities of it.
Yeah.
But it does give fuel to the fire of a skeptic.
Yeah, I agree.
But again, a skeptic is also coming in looking to punch holes in it.
Yeah, their doubts or their questions have become their armor, basically.
Yeah.
It's what's at the forefront of their mind. So if you want to get in this conversation, again, you've got to be able to answer this.
Yeah.
And my guess is you can't answer it. So there tends to be, I don't want to use the word hostility, but I think those are the ones who it's like, to get into a conversation, I feel like your confidence could get hit really quickly because they're going to probably speak to maybe some doubts you might even have as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, several years ago, I read a paper that was written by a young pastor in response to the legalization of marijuana, and which they were strictly opposed to, which, me too. But he was coming out from this weird angle of talking how it is directly in connection to satanic worship and demon possession. I mean, way down a crazy line of like, this is the only result of marijuana use, or the only reason for marijuana use. I'm like, bro, I've been around some potheads. That's not why they're doing it. I guarantee it, man. They're not smart enough to want it that bad. Yeah. But so it was this position paper that he was writing to his church, and it was just it was full of big words. It was just a really, really poor position paper. But then at the end, it said, if you have any disagreements with me, the burden of proof is on your shoulders. So basically saying, like, unless you could come prove me wrong or prove your position, I don't want to hear it.
Interesting.
And so he's like, this is my opinion, this is my stance, and the burden to change my mind, the burden to prove me wrong, that's on you, not on me to prove that I'm right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's kind of a position a skeptic takes. It's kind of like this, hey, listen, you gotta show me. I know what I know.
Yeah.
And I know what I don't know. And so there is just, I don't want to say they're aggressive, but there's a wall there. And I think a lot of times there's some pain behind that wall.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There's some hurt. And if we can hear the hurt and not get off put by the front wall,
Yeah.
then maybe there's a chance for a good, healthy dialogue.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think that's where consistency and showing up and kind of the showing of what you're, walking the walk basically is so valuable in that. 'Cause I think let's just face it head on and convince, right? And try to do the saving yourself. You're I hate to use the term wasting your time, but it's like at some level it's like you're fighting a battle that's not yours to fight. Like
it's fruitless for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a rare it's a probably, let's say this way, just to play it safe, because I'm sure there's somebody like, I can tell you different. It's a very rare situation where that would work.
Sure.
I'm certainly not going to say never. I've never seen it work, but it's a probably very, very, very rare situation where that approach would work. So then, you have people that may be skeptics, and then there's a bigger group, and this is probably one of the more common groups that we probably interact with on a regular basis. And this would just be a group that I would just call, they're just doubters.
Yeah.
They just have their doubts. And so they're not wanting to get into a big debate. They're not looking to try and defend a position. They don't really have a position. But it's kind of like, I have some family members that would be in this group. I have friends that would be in this group of like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't know about this whole God thing. So I'm just going to kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not agnostic necessarily. They wouldn't, maybe they don't know that term.
Yeah.
They're not willing to say there's a possibility God could not exist. I always find a lot of times with doubters, it's like, no, God probably exists. I just don't know if it's something for me or.
Yeah, it's like almost like a choice.
Yeah.
Like, now whatever. Like life is life.
Yeah.
Whether I have God in it or not.
Right.
The doubter, the people I feel like I've interacted with that are doubters, it tends to be someone who I probably would actually consider a believer.
It could be.
But there's just hang-ups.
Yeah.
And so to be sold out is a whole different category, and then we can get into the whole like, okay, they're really a believer or not, but it's like that's a different conversation. But
I think you're spot on. That's cool. That's an interesting look. It's probably, if we're looking like this on a graph or something, it's probably the category of doubter starts somewhere above someone who has experienced salvation, but it could extend down past that line as well. There's people that probably have at one point made this prayer to Jesus, but man, they still have so many doubts. Yeah,
and the ones I think of are actually a lot of my friends' grandparents, or like grandpas specifically. I have a couple in mind, which is like, there's a really good dude and like have lived a really solid, awesome life. They're a little harder, right?
Yeah.
Like life's cooked him a little bit. If you ask any family members, oh yeah, they have faith, but it's just kind of like, but life's been a little hard. So it's just that space of there's enough doubt of like, am I really that good of a guy?
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like I think God's real. I doubt I'm good enough for God.
That could be. Yeah, that's good.
That's where my mind goes when I think of the doubter.
I doubt God could love me or forgive me.
Yeah, does God really love me? So it's like, it's not even so much of like if God is there or not. It's just whether or not I'm worthy of God.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's kind of like, we looked at that passage out of the book of Mark where Jesus is confronted by a dad pleading for his son and kind of says, Jesus, heal him if you can.
Yeah.
And Jesus, I don't know if Jesus is offended or not. We can't read tone into text, but part of me thinks like Jesus, like, say what? Like, if I can, I'm the son of God. But the man makes this interesting statement. He says, I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief.
Yeah.
And I think that is maybe what you're describing. And so there's doubters all over the church. I mean, there's doubters. All of us have some doubts, but I wouldn't be a doubter.
It's almost like the skeptic, the agnostic, the atheist, their issue is with God, where a doubter's issue is with themselves.
Ooh, that's good.
And so I think that tends to be the struggle is, like you said, like the man in the Bible is like, no, I believe you are who you say you are.
I don't believe
it's me and it's my kid. Like, I don't know you. Do you really care? Like, I would understand if you didn't care, if you didn't heal.
Yeah. Or do you think he's even saying maybe, I believe that you're who you say you are. I'm just not sure I believe you can do what I need you to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just, there's the doubt. It's like, it's not so much a question of, it's a question of faith.
Yeah.
But not at the level of like, I believe there's a God.
Mm-hmm.
It's, no, again, it's almost does God really care? But I think it's more of an issue with self. It's more of like a faith that, like, am I worth it?
That's interesting. No, that's super good. Because that probably would then bring in a whole different grouping of folks that even go to church. They believe in God, but they have yet to surrender their life fully.
100%.
Like, I can't quite trust God with my career. I can't quite trust God with my relationships, or I can't quite trust God with my children or my dreams. And so that's driven by doubt. I doubt God either can do or wants to do the good in my life that he talks about. And so my doubts are hindering my submission and my surrender to him. Really hindering my ability to just follow Jesus.
100%.
So
I'm reading a book about an individual who avid hunter, avid like sportsman basically, and he tells a story about his best friend who was a hunter with him, and how his best friend never swore, right? Never heard him cuss, never saw him drink, never saw him, but just loved Jesus, had one girlfriend who he married was his wife, like just the most stand up, coached football, like all that, right? He just like was like so enamored by the lifestyle this man lived, who also loved the same thing he loved, was hunting. And he would talk about, in the book, he talks about how like his faith was always that of like, it'd be really high and then it'd be really low. And it'd be, am I there or am I not? And it always was him referring back to like, I would see it and I would believe it, but could I do it? Could I really believe at that level? But he talks about when his friend passed away, he's like, the one thing I know for sure is how like obvious the love of Jesus was at that man's funeral, and how honored I was to speak to it, and how much it grew my faith in that moment. But again, it was like almost that level of like, I don't know if could do what he did, because in my past I drank, or because sometimes I cuss still, or it's almost what you're saying, like there's like those aspects of my life of like, I've not made myself good enough for God yet. And so I think that to me is like encapsulates the doubter, where that man would say, I believe there's a God, I just don't think I'm good enough for God.
No, that's good. And so then that means if I'm the side of doubting, and really, I mean, doubting encompasses all of them, because if, an atheist may be more about, no, I don't doubt my position. But agnostics, there's just this huge, serious levels of doubt at different levels. So the other side of doubt then would be faith. So that's the alternative. And we know that faith is at the hub of all of this. We know that Hebrews 11 talks about that it's impossible to please God without faith. And so the existence of God is driven by my faith, by my belief in what I don't see. Even though God does reveal himself, God does show himself. We read about God showing himself in the heavens and in the hearts of men. God has shown himself in his faithfulness to us in our lives. So there's a word that I think you're the first one to use it in this teaching series, like week 2. You used a really cool word and talked about why we're doing this, and you brought the word confidence. And I just remember you using that maybe in your opening intro, but I was like, that's it. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to give you weapons necessarily. We're not trying to just put tools on the toolbox. We're trying to help you feel confident. But but not just confident in the words, but confident in your faith. Confident in what you walk every day. Because that is the biggest testimony. That's the biggest highlight that's going to draw people into here. Is, are you walking with confidence? Are we living with confidence that, and not confidence in us, and not confidence in our strength, our power, not confidence in this world, or not confidence in any of those things, but confidence in who God is. And we talked about the kind of who God is, who Jesus is, and what the cross did for us. Because someone who's confident, man, they just walk different.
100%.
I mean,
and I think that the reason I think the word confidence was so important is because I think, again, to like the doubter side of things, you can hide your doubts fairly. Like you could tend to cover some of that stuff up. And it's like, man, if you just had a little more confidence in who God says you are and what it means to have faith, like how much richer and fuller would your life be?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of being confident is the idea that you can walk the walk first and then talk it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but instead of feeling sheepish because of, you know, a lack of confidence, like let's embolden us to like, you don't have to have the answer, but you should trust where that answer comes from.
Yep.
And so let's be confident in it.
Yep. So for you, because we've said from the get-go, questions are fine, doubts are fine. If you're a follower of Jesus and you have questions and doubts that pop up from time to time, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not a bad Christian. It's part of our humanness, I think. I think that the fork in that road is, what do I do with my doubts and my questions, and where do they lead me to?
Yeah.
Of course, our hope and prayer would be that they lead you to a deeper searching of God's word and into who God is. And through that, you experience the faith side. But for you, like, what are some other, maybe, I don't want to say tips or tricks, but maybe just what are some ways that you have found yourself over time? Like, you know what, when doubt it starts seeping in, this is what I do.
Yeah. I go back to what I know. I try to go back to things I've read, things I've learned, past messages I've watched or listened to, like stuff that kind of grounds me almost. Mm-hmm. And then I also think, like, when it's come to doubts, like I try to, okay, why am I thinking that way? And am I going and trying to find an answer, or am I just sitting back and being like, yeah, I'll just deal with it later? I think we've talked about like how almost Satan works or evil works, like when you give him that space, you know. And so, when I find myself doubting, I try to go talk it out or ask questions or seek answers sooner than later.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Because I'm sure, I know your story, you know my story. There certainly have been plenty of moments through our years where we've had the opportunity to let doubts win, whether it's through life circumstances or self-inflicted things or whatever it may be. It's what we do with those doubts.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I retreat to what I know. I take time to sit often and when I feel those moments coming in, and whether my doubts are driven by fear, irrational fears, things that aren't even real probably.
Yeah.
I just reflect on how God has been so faithful already. I think back and look back like, wow, look what God did through this season of my life. Yeah. Look how good he was here, and that was much deeper than this valley. Or, man, the challenges, the suffering. Look what God did. Yeah. And I just keep thinking, I look back and I kind of praise him for his faithfulness, and I acknowledge that. Yeah. And I think to myself, listen, if God was faithful through all that, what's that? There's a song, pretty popular worship song. He won't stop now. He won't. Why would he stop now? He won't. Right. Yeah. So I use that a lot of time. I'm like, man, and I think that was probably one of the great purposes behind the Old Testament, particularly of so many altars being built. Really, so many times throughout the Exodus, particularly, when God would do a miraculous work, they would build an altar. Yeah. And they would that would stand there as a reminder for all times, for all the other peoples. Hey, look, God was faithful here. Yeah. And I think that at one point it's even referred to as an Ebenezer stone. Yep. A remembrance of God's faithfulness. A significant working of God happened at this place. And so maybe, and this applies, I think, to all the different categories we talked about. We all have this calling as followers of Jesus to be part of the mission to reach those who are lost, those who don't know Jesus. Yeah. Whether they're all the way in this atheist camp or whether they're just somewhere in these doubter camps. And although our goal through this last few months has been to give you some talking points, it's not been to prepare you to go and engage in an argument. It's give you some words and some things to say when you're asked questions. But I think our greatest first line of I don't even say defense, our first line of offense is to go out there and just live this life with confidence.
Yeah, that's good.
To live my faith in confidence, to not be rattled by life circumstances, to not be rattled, not that you're not hurt, but not to be rattled. Yeah. The Bible uses the word troubled. Yeah. Jesus says this to his disciples right before the whole trial and punishment and death begins. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. And in the original context, that's a word that that refers to don't become hopeless. Don't throw in that towel and become totally hopeless.
Yeah.
The follower of Jesus has the ability to live in a confidence with hope, confidence with peace and joy in the face of anything because of who God is, who Jesus is, and what happened on the cross. And my belief, my experience has been that living a life of confident faith speaks louder than any words I could preach.
Yeah, that's good.
And it goes back to the old cliche that I don't believe it at face value, but I don't even know who said it. It's debates who started this phrase. Preach everywhere you go, and if you have to, say something.
Yep.
Which I get, I understand. I'd rather say preach everywhere you go, and because of that, you're going to get to say something.
Yeah, that's good.
I think if people like you have people in your life that know what you do, they know who you are, and if they're far from God and they're watching Andrew Clark live his life day in and day out and passionately follow Jesus and lead his family in that way and go through some dark, deep valleys of pain and loss, and yet through it all, there's this confident faith as you follow Jesus, they are at some point going to want to know what's up.
Yeah. No, that's good.
How on earth did you make it through that? How on earth do you still love Jesus how did you overcome all the evils, the unfairness? They're going to want to know, and that's what I think 2 Peter's talking about. Like, hey, just be ready.
Yeah. To
give them a reason for your hope.
Yeah, that's good.
But if you're not living a life that's confident following Jesus, nobody's asking.
Yeah. No, I always think of in high school I played basketball, and I had a couple of buddies on the team, and I just remember being like, on Wednesdays I'd get out as soon as I could, and even if we got out late, I'd still go to youth group and like make it known, like, hey, this is where I'm going, or like on games that are Fridays, like get invited to parties, but I know I'm actually gonna go do this, or just something that I just remember living that life, and again, not trying to shove the Bible down anyone's throat or be a goody two shoes, whatever. Like, it was just like, no, this is what I do, like, and this is some of the convictions I have and the life I'm choosing to live. But still having fun and still being a high schooler too, but just being about what I said I was going to be about. And then I remember midway through my freshman year of college, I got a Facebook message from a buddy who I played basketball with for all those years. Even in middle school, we'd played basketball together. And he was like, hey man, my life's fallen apart. And all I've been able to think about is you and God and what that was like. And could we talk? And it was like, I just remember being so, as a freshman in college and starting to be a pastor myself, but just being so caught off guard from the fact of like, oh wow, like I just was confident in what I was about. And I never, did I invite those guys to youth group or stuff? Of course. I made it known that they were always welcome to come with me, but it wasn't like I was sitting there every day with my Bible out and just reading and preaching to them. I was just living my life and being confident in what I believed. And you fast forward, and now we're having the conversation of what is faith, what is God. And so I think it's true. I think that idea of being confident in you confidence doesn't mean you have to go out and fight. Doesn't mean you have to go out and argue. You have to go out and win. It's just the confidence in knowing, like, this is who God says he is. I believe this is who God is, and I'm going to live my life, hopefully worthy, that brings glory to him. And I think the rest follows.
Dude, 100%. It's, you're talking through that, and I'm envisioning a scene from a movie. Because you shared with me a couple weeks ago, me and a couple of staff members, you've been on this old Western kick. And you've been watching Westerns. Either you'd seen before or you hadn't seen before. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, you just recently watched Tombstone for the first time.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, incredible.
So yeah, incredible movie. Film, old school, but so good, so good. Yep. But one of the scenes I go to when I think of the term confidence is the scene where Wyatt Earp, being played by Kurt Russell, he walks into a saloon that had really been on the down and out because no customers went in there. Like, because there's this one dude who's running the poker games who's like a bully. Yep. Like a full-on bully, cussing everybody, screaming, threatening everybody. Yep. So nobody wants to go in there. They're all scared of him, essentially. Yeah,
he's a cheat. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah.
So here comes Wyatt Earp with no guns, and he walks right up to that dude and says, "You're sitting in my chair." And the dude stands up. He's got guns, and he's all ready. And the scene is just so cool. Like I think because we all want to be that tough. Yep. But Wyatt Earp just stands there and just he's not budging.
Yeah.
And he tells the guy, you know, pull those guns, pull those smoke wagons,
Yep.
you know, and smacks him around a little bit. Are you going to do something? Or are you just going to stand there and bleed?
Yep.
Yeah, and the dude cowers. I mean, Wyatt Earp never pulls a gun, never even doesn't even, just his confidence.
Yeah.
In fact, his resolve.
Yeah.
He out-bullied that dude all day long, man. He owned him by his stare down.
Yeah.
And I love that because it's like, I want to live my faith, not like a bully, but I want to live my faith with that kind of confidence of like, dang, look at that resolve.
Yeah.
That dude's not backing down.
Yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
good.
matter. Holy smokes. Because let's be honest, at that point, we all just want to go hang out with Wyatt Earp.
Yeah. Yeah. Prove that we are Daisy.
Yeah.
We do have the skills.
Yes, yes.
But I think you're right. I think that idea of to face what comes in life because you're just confident.
Mm-hmm.
You're confident in God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I would point, you know, anything in my life, any up and down. And we've talked about on Sundays and in this podcast and all that. And we all have those moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been clear, like, it's okay to have your doubts or your questions. It's like, but are you confident in where you're going to go find the answer?
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, hopefully, like, that's what's going to happen in the fallout, and what comes out of all of this is that you walk away feeling like, man, I can stand and face anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they might have, the threat might be greater than what I feel like I have to offer, but I'm confident in God, in who he says he is. And so, I'll stand here firm. I'll stand here tall and chest up and ready to face it.
I don't need to go heels to get to jump in a tub like you.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
Exactly.
Hey, so I guess, wrap it up. Hey, followers of Jesus, man, live this thing out loud.
Yeah.
Live it out loud with full confidence. And when you get the chance, then you can talk about it.
Yeah.
But you live it right. You live that confidence in God. You live that confidence in Jesus, and you walk the talk like that. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. It's gonna lead to things.
Yeah. So good.
Love it. All right. Hey, thanks for being with us. Sorry for all of our movie references, but that's what we do. So we appreciate you being with us today on the Bayview Podcast. We're here every week. So hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're on, so you never miss an episode. And until next week, this is Chris, it's Andrew. We are out of here, and we'll see you next time around.